Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin, my co-host. And Dr. Lopkin, you'd have to say the Bolton situation is the number one story of the week.
Yeah, John Bolton has grabbed the headlines, and it's amazing. I have never seen somebody aggravate both sides of the political spectrum as quickly as he did. Trump is absolutely furious at what he's saying. The Democrats are yelling he's got nothing. He's just trying to sell a book. And they're very aggravated. No, Democrats.
Really?
Because the Democrats are furious because they say, if he had this information, why didn't he say it under oath when they were trying to get him to testify? He would not testify under oath, but he's making a big deal about it for the book. And I have to agree with them. If he really had the goods, he should have testified under oath.
Well, I mean, what intrigues me is I've known Mr. Bolton obviously not personally, but I've followed him all the way from the Iraq War. He's a staunch conservative. I'm kind of surprised that he's flaming the fire of the Democrats. I mean, he's trying to undermine Donald Trump's presidency or re-election, isn't he?
He is, but I honestly think he's doing this for the purpose of selling a book, not for any political reasons. And some of the statements he's made, he did an interview with ABC News that I believe is going to air either tonight or this weekend. And they've shown some clips of it. And he's made this statement that Trump tried to get Xi to help him win re-election. And the answer, when he's asked about this, the example he gives when he talks about what happened is that Trump was trying to get China to buy soybeans and other agricultural goods. And during the negotiations, while he was trying this, trying to sell these goods, he made the comment, if we get this done, that's going to be great for my re-election. Okay, this is what Bolton said in the clip from ABC. Now, That's a very different story than he's trying to get China to help with his re-election.
Oh, no, and every president since, who knows, FDR, Theodore Roosevelt. I mean, yeah, you don't do anything for your that's naive and ridiculous, obvious.
Of course.
So how much legs do you think this has?
Probably about a week or two until the book actually comes out. People will make a big deal about it if it comes out because the Trump administration is suing to keep it from being released. Judgment came down today that they are holding off. So they are still waiting to make a decision. So we don't know if it's going to be published or not. My guess is that it will be published. I don't think the Trump administration is going to
Trump made a huge mistake in doing what he's doing. It's putting fuel on the fire. Let it come out. What I've heard from people that have actually read it is there's nothing. It's a nothing burger. It's like what you said. It's like, yeah, okay, he commented on this, or he said there's nothing huge here.
Yeah, and that's really been what's been going on for the last 4 years. Every time somebody announces, oh, we've got proof that Trump did, when they release that so-called evidence, it never really stands up to scrutiny. It's like, oh, he made an offhand comment. It's not that he made a concerted effort. Bolton has said over and over again in these interviews that everything Trump did was geared toward getting him reelected. Well, realistically,
welcome to the club.
Everything every president has done has been geared towards reelection. Because
like
if you
Obama
don't
didn't?
deliver if you don't deliver to your base what you promised them, they're not going to reelect you. I find it absolutely hysterical how many of the criticisms about Trump have been boiled down to that he's actually trying to uphold his campaign promises.
Yeah, I think this, at first, when it first came out, or the rumors of the book first surfaced, I thought, whoa, this could be a barn burner. The more that comes out, it's kind of, I hate to use the term, a nothing burger. And Bolton's ruined his credibility on both sides.
Oh, he has. There is an article in Politico that I saw calling him the most hated man in Washington. And it discusses how the Trump administration is furious with him, the Republicans are furious with him, and the Democrats are furious with him. He has actually managed to find an issue or create an issue that has united both sides of Washington, and it's all against him.
I hope for him that his book sells well, because I think he's finished in Washington. Do you agree?
Oh, he's definitely finished in Washington. However, I think no matter how well his book does, he will be on the speaker circuit. And I think that's what this is really all about. It's about building up those speaking fees.
I think you're 100% correct with that one. And again, on the political realm, there's a rally coming up, a huge rally. Your interpretation, your thoughts on that, the Trump rally?
Yeah, Trump has a rally coming up tomorrow in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm not sure who brought suit against it, but there was a lawsuit filed to try to keep him from having this based on health concerns. Today, the Oklahoma Supreme Court actually found in favor of the Trump campaign, saying, there's no standing to cancel the rally. Is it risky? Honestly, it depends. I mean, yes, Oklahoma is on the uptick of cases of COVID-19. But if if the people are smart enough and they, wear masks, we've already rolled out remdesivir for the most severe cases. We've just found out that readily available steroids help people that have more mild cases than the remdesivir, helps. We need to start getting back to normal. And the fact of the matter is, I think a political rally is the perfect example, because this is not something anybody is forced to go to. If you're concerned about it, stay home and don't go.
Here's what I think. I think it's very risky. I got to be honest with you. I think I'm not so much with the people there. One of his biggest problems, Trump actually was gaining in the polls. Two things that have done him really a disservice is his handling of Corona, being really political about it. He was not, let's just say, 100% presidential, and the racial issues that have surfaced lately. So sticking back to the Corona, I think if we have a huge second wave, it's not going to play well, Dave.
No, obviously a huge second wave is not going to play well. And honestly, most places are already anticipating a second wave. Colleges have already announced that they're going to reopen in August or September with in-person classes. Classes are going to go until Thanksgiving, and then after Thanksgiving break, the rest of the semester is going to be done online because that's when they think the second wave is going to hit.
So, Eric, don't you think that's a problem if that's actually playing out, that people are going to say this idiot has having these? In other words, you need to be presidential. I don't know. I don't know the answer. Personally, I think it could really backfire.
I honestly don't think it's going to. Let's be honest. Trump has never been presidential. Not from the minute he came down the escalator announcing his candidacy. He hasn't acted presidential. That's been the biggest problem with his presidency. That has not phased his base. The folks that complain he's not presidential, the folks that are worried, oh my God, what's going to happen? These are not the people who were voting for him in the first place. He is playing to his base, which he has always done.
Yeah, but to win the election, everyone says that to me. Even people that are totally anti-Trump say, the base, the base, the base. But, Eric, isn't it really about getting the swing voters? And this might be an action that's going to repel them.
Honestly, I don't think there are swing voters in this one. I think there are people who will vote for Trump, and there were people who will vote for anybody but Trump. I don't know that there are swing voters. I honestly believe that what's going to happen is he's going to lose the popular vote again, but he will win the electoral.
That could actually be very much the case. And speaking about the election, we have his adversary, obviously, well, all things being equal, his adversary, Biden. So far, what do you think, Eric? In terms of what's going on, hiding in the bunker. I actually think that's the best strategy for him.
Oh, it's definitely Biden's best strategy. The less he says, the better he does in the polls. The problem is, as the election goes on, he's not going to be able to do that forever. Come September, October, he's actually going to have to get out there and talk. And I have spoken to diehard Democrats, folks that actually work for the Democratic Party, and a lot of them don't think he has a chance to win. A lot of them are convinced he has dementia.
Well, isn't it a disservice that the Democrats put someone, basically anointed someone that they know? I mean, anyone that's objective, even again, I have diehard Democratic friends. They know he's not the guy for the job, but they put him up for it. Isn't it kind of scary that this guy is not up for the task?
He really isn't, and he was given the coronation of the Democratic Party primarily to stop the Bernie Sanders AOC wing of the party. Biden
he's kowtowed to them.
He's kowtowed to them to a certain extent to try to unify the party, because they know if they don't unify the party at least a little, they don't have any chance of beating Trump. The problem is they had good candidates. They had people who were capable of doing the job, but they didn't have the name recognition, so the high muckety-mucks at the Democratic Party dismissed them early. And if they hadn't done that...
If Klobuchar, as we talked about in previous episodes, could have been a more than capable adversary.
Absolutely. I mean, I supported Amy Klobuchar in the primaries. If she had been the candidate, I would vote for her before I would vote for Trump.
Absolutely, you and I both. Yes, I would have, because she's someone that I can embrace, and I believe she would have killed Trump.
I think she would have. I think she would have won both the popular and the electoral. She would have knocked Trump out, but she wasn't part of the Democratic elite. And, I mean, let's not forget, when Hillary beat Bernie in the 2016 primary, a group of Sanders supporters brought a court case against the Democratic Party saying they had fixed the primary because they decided who they wanted, and they wanted the courts to overturn it. The case was thrown out because the people filing the case did not have standing. It would have had to be filed by the Sanders campaign themselves, and he refused to do it. But in the Democratic response, and this is now part of the court public record, the Democratic Party stated that it's their primary and they can do what they want with it.
Yeah, what do you now? Before we go to break, well, maybe after the break, let's talk about the Bernie Bros and the impact on this upcoming election.
Yeah, hold that thought. We'll be right back.
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an extreme flash flood.
Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. Talk to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
And we're back. And remember, if you want to be part of this conversation, you can call us at 563-999-3693. That's 563-999-3693.
Well, let's talk about the Bernie Bros in this election. My feeling is that Biden has not pissed them off like Hillary did. So I think they're not going to be enthusiastic, but they won't be non-existent. What do you think?
I don't know that they'll be non-existent, but one of the fundraisers that was very high up in the Sanders campaign, after Sanders dropped out, he formed a super PAC. And he has publicly stated that the Bernie Bros are not embracing Biden. They are most likely to stay home. And this is actually why he formed the super PAC, so that he could use money to try to convince them to come out and beat Trump. But so far, his call on this is that the Bernie Bros are staying home. They're not going to
that's a
support
repeat
Trump,
of
but
2016, isn't it, Eric?
It really is. The left wing of the party is not playing well with the more centrist wing of the party, and this has been a split for I think more than the last 4 years, but it became very obvious in the 2016 election with Sanders' candidacy. The problem is the Democratic Party knows that a left-wing candidate will not win a general election. And the left wing doesn't want to do that.
But hasn't he flipped? I think the Biden of old, not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree, but someone I knew, obviously not personally, but, following politics, was middle of the road, very palatable. He's really gone far. I mean, obviously he's not in control. Other people are telling him what to do, but he's gone far left. I don't know if that works, to your point about losing the Electoral College vote, winning the popular vote. I believe, Eric, you're correct. I think that's really what's going to happen. This does not play well in Peoria.
No, it doesn't. And that's part of the big problem. It's why there were so many liberals making so much noise over the past few years that they want to abolish the Electoral College. Because the fact of the matter is, California, New York, Chicago, the bulk of the population is in these three areas, New England to a lesser extent, and these are left-swinging areas. However,
no question about it. It's amazing. Absolutely. In fact, I was floored that like a third of the population, you mentioned Chicago, you say, well, that's a city. No, in that area, Illinois, the Chicago area, is a third of the population. It's really the West Coast, the East Coast, and the Chicago basin is a huge chunk of the population. And, that does lead you to think, is the Electoral College obsolete? I don't know. I mean, why not have a straight-up election?
Actually, this shows more than ever why the Electoral College is necessary, because the folks in California and New York and New England, they're never going to vote for what's best for Iowa, Nebraska, Wyoming, Kansas, Missouri, those areas. And the center of the country does not want to be minimized. They know, and let's face it, there is a big split between the coasts and the center of the country. Mm-hmm. They're never going to agree on what's best. Why? Because more of the liberal population tends to live in cities. More of the right wing, rural has a more rural population. They live in, again, the center of the country where they're more, farm country, things like that. The needs of these folks are not the same. And, this is not a new problem. The Democrats,
Eric, I was going to think of that. Wait a second. That I think it's being exasperated. Yes, it was always there, but there was a time, you would be, when you think about it, you could pretty much fall over on the floor. California elected Ronald Reagan. This country's increasingly becoming divided. There's no gray area. It's divided. Left coast, right coast, and again, you talk about like Chicago area. There's no middle ground here. And like I said, 1960s, Ronald Reagan won 2 terms in California. Wilson won a governorship in the early 90s or late 80s.
It's gotten so much worse. Right now, John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan would be thrown out of their respective parties for being too centrist. And these were folks that were considered very liberal and very conservative for their time.
Yeah, pretty radical, right? Reagan was. The only thing I would say is, I believe that JFK would be unceremoniously dismissed from the Democratic Party. Ronald Reagan, I got your point, but it's not as extreme. The Democratic Party's the real party that's left the ranch. I really do believe that.
And the Democrats,
there's things that Reagan stood for that still would be very, very, very cohesive right now.
But the Democrats saw this coming. They knew this back in 1980. Because after the Carter presidency, that's when the Democratic Party instituted the superdelegates. And the stated reason for having the superdelegates was to keep an ultra-liberal candidate off of their ballot, because they knew an ultra-liberal candidate would not carry the country. Now, honestly, there were a lot of people that stated the first candidate that the superdelegates were actually created to stop from being on the ballot was Barack Obama. But because he was African American, they didn't want to risk being called racist.
You're probably correct. Yes. And on our final segment of the show, speaking of the election, David Horowitz, who is respected, someone on both sides, has a book called Blitz, where he predicted that Trump wins in a landslide.
Yeah,
an Amazon bestseller.
Yeah, Horowitz has an amazing track record for picking elections. I suppose it's possible. I'm not sure. I've stuck with giving Trump about a 60% chance of re-election. Still don't see a landslide, especially if there's a second wave of COVID, if the economy does not come roaring back like people are expecting. I think those are going to blunt him.
Yes, I think what's going to happen, and I want your commentary on this, is Trump is going to be behind in the polls until the debates, and I think that is going to be the most significant debates in modern history besides Nixon, Kennedy. I really believe that then there's going to be 3. I thought at one time there was going to be none. There may be more. I don't think there's going to be more, but they're pushing. There will at least be 3, and I think there's no way to hide in terms of if you're Biden, it's not going to be pretty. He might rally. I could be wrong, but I think that could be a real game changer.
I think the debates are going to be significant. I don't think they're going to change the polls. Remember, in 2016, Donald Trump was very far behind in the polls on Election Day. And none of the polling companies have changed their methodology. And the big problem is Trump supporters don't trust the polling companies. They look at them as part of the liberal media, so they don't talk to the polling companies. So I think Biden is going to go into Election Day with the polls saying he's going to win at just the same way Hillary did. And I think it's going to go the same way for him.
You have a very good point, Eric. You have a great point, but I really do believe that it's more pervasive now. Because I think to say you're for Trump, even though people think it's a blind poll, people are not willing to say that. It's a big. I've seen people that have said to me, "Oh, I'm anti-Trump. I hate Trump," and then behind closed doors, yeah, I love the guy, or I like the guy, or I think he's going to win, or whatever. It's just socially not permissible to say I like Trump.
And again, you and I have that situation because we're in New England. New England swings way blue. But I've seen newscasts from other places in America, and the fact of the matter is that attitude is not pervasive everywhere. It is pervasive on national media because the national media is based in New York, California, and Washington, D.C. So
I guess my only point is I think that you can shave, but I think you can still shave 2 or 3 points easily from the polls because of bias from what you're saying and also what I'm saying in terms of people not being willing to say, yeah, I like Trump, or I think he's going to win, or I'm voting for him. I think it's a combination of both.
I think it's even more than that because remember, all of these polls have about a 2% margin of error. You add another 2 to 3% on that. That's a 5% swing right there.
Yes, I do agree. Any final thoughts, Dr. Lopkin?
I think we live in interesting times. It's an old Chinese curse, and I think it's come true.
I think we're more than interesting times. I think, yes, I think people are very, very scared about the economy, about coronavirus, and I think those are going to weigh heavily on the election. But I don't think Bolton's book is going to.
No, I think Bolton's book is coming out way too early to be a factor in the election. If it had come out at the end of October, it might have been. So
yeah, and there's really not much there.
We're hitting a hard stop. Remember, you can listen to the replays of our live Carnivore Radio as well as our Carnivore Bites podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as Google Play.
Very good. That concludes another edition of Carnivore Radio.
And we'll see you next week.